Hello, dear ones. I think we are live. We are live.
We are.
I'm with Sacred Blue Heron Woman, the loveliest, most amazing woman you'll ever meet or speak to or listen to, straight from the hottest days of Indianola, Oklahoma. And I'm Julian Catari from Jalapa, Veracruz, in a very rainy kind of time. And we're on the 97th transmission, our 97th, coming close to the 100th show, 100th program we've had, with only about 2 misses, 2 interruptions, which is, I think, an amazing feat.
It is. Absolutely amazing. So that means we're 7 weeks from being 2 years.
Wow. That's the time goes so fast. And yet I've been having the lesson, the teaching from Spirit of the unimportance of time, of how time is just kind of, it's there and it's relevant, but to a point. My new girlfriend, she happens to be kind of like remembering people and having these experiences that you cannot make sense if you have this linear time thing.
Yeah.
They just don't make sense. It's almost like she has lived things. She remembers things she hasn't lived, right? So how do you explain that? So time is it's irrelevant. So let me just say that this is, so we can get started. 97th is the Pentagram, is the today's show, or today's transmission, or today's I Need Living conversation. The Pentagram, and I guess there's a lot to do with Venus, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. So let's get started and let's see what you have.
Well, we're going to get started by talking about depth.
Okay.
Like a friend of mine back in March, when I said to him, go deeper, he looked at me very perplexed. So anyone, when I start saying go deeper and you look at me perplexed, this is what we're going to talk about, this dimension of going deeper, depth.
Okay.
Depth is the dimension of closeness and distance. It is the way the world spreads out from a few oak leaves left dangling brown and spent in front of my face here in the fall, to the rocky ridge across the glen, and beyond that to the further hills piled one upon another against the last mountain range, silhouettes zigzagged against the sky, and on past that mountain range, opening out across the unseen desert to a horizon still faintly visible between a few peaks. That's depth. Depth is the visceral stretch between the near and far of things, the continuum or glide between the known and the unknown. And I like that word. I think I really like that word glide instead of continuum. The glide. Okay. I'll be using that lots. Depth implicates the whole of our animal body, this carnal density of muscles and skin and breath, situating us physically within the animate landscape. The dimension of depth varies with each change in our position. The dimension of depth is ruled by Proteus, the shape-shifting god, whose dominion over sensory experience teaches us to stay loose, to invite magic, and to expect metamorphosis. Depth is not a determinate relation between inert objects arrayed within a static space, but a dynamic tension between bodies, between beings that beckon and repulse one another across an expanse that can never be precisely mapped, across a gap that waxes and wanes according to the mood playing through one's limbs or the limbs of the forest itself, according to the whoosh of the wind pouring through the needles or the way sun spills warmth upon the soil. The way all these other bodies, trees, bushes, hillsides, animals, birds, shift in relation to one another as we walk compels our thorough inclusion in the landscape. There is really a huge world going about its business independent of us, and we are alive in its folds. We're embedded in this world and yet not bound and imprisoned by it. So with this belief, there's a new freedom here, a looseness, an improvisational opening between us and the beings around us. There's a new freedom in discovering that it's more true to say that we dwell in the earth rather than on it. So to claim that we live on the earth's surface implies that the clouds overhead are not themselves earthly powers, that the invisible depth in which they swim is an emptiness, a void continuous with the space between the planets. So it's more true that the clouds themselves are a part of the turning of our earth. And we don't really stand on the surface of this world. We're rather submerged within a transparent layer of this planet, an invisible stratum of the earth that extends far above the clouds. The air we breathe is not just a random bunch of gases simply drawn to earth by earth's gravity, but an elixir generated by the soils, the oceans, the numberless organisms that inhabit this world. Each creature exchanging certain ingredients for others as it exhales, drinking the sunlight with our leaves or filtering water with our gills. All of us contributing to the composition of this phantasmagoric brew, circulating it steadily between us and nourishing ourselves on its magic, generating ourselves from its substance. It is as endemic to the earth as the sand or the rocks beneath our feet. So perhaps we should add the letter I to our planet's name and call her Earth. Wow. In order to remind ourselves that the air is entirely a part of Earth, and the I, or the capital I, or self, is wholly immersed in that fluid element. We are enfolded within it, permeated, carnally immersed in the depths of this breathing planet. To go deeper and deeper into oneself is also to go further and further out into the universe until we reach the domain where three-dimensional sensory images are no longer valued. For the three-dimensional world seems to appear in a matrix as different in form as tones from the flute. So that's depth.
Wow. No, it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful words. So the line between poetics and just science is totally blurred. You can't just call it poetics or just call it description of reality. It's just both things.
It's living.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, to me, makes the difference. It's living. Poetic language is living. It helps you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no other language to describe the living.
No.
When you get too technical and you want to get to in a language that is too descriptive, technically descriptive, you kill it. You dissect it and you kill it.
Yeah, we do. So let's move on to the pentacle or the pentagram.
Okay.
Or the Venus pentangle. So there's three words there that describe a five-pointed star.
Okay.
So what does the pentacle or pentagram? It represents the human body, balanced and beautiful. If we stand feet shoulder width apart or further and stretch out our arms, we are a five-pointed star. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Mm-hmm. It represents our five senses, the five stages of life, and the presence in our bodies of the five elements. So Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man is a good example of a pentacle using the human form as a template of sacred geometry. The pentacle or pentagram, with its encapsulation of energy building from point to point, is a symbol of creation moving to action, as well as the controlling destructive cycle that keeps all in balance. So, of course, the pentagram or pentacle of the five senses are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. And we won't go any deeper into those tonight. We're going to start with, we'll leave Venus for last because that's the most juiciest part.
That's the last one.
I'm going to keep you on pins and needles about Venus till last. So the 5 stages of life are birth, the beginning, the time of coming into being, initiation, adolescence, the time of individuation, love, ripening, the time of union with another, of full adulthood, sexuality, responsibility, and love. The 4th is the reflection, the time of advancing age, of repose, integration, and wisdom. And the 5th is the death, the time of ending, of letting go, of moving on towards rebirth. So now we're going to start with the iron pentacle. The fire of red, iron, earth energy as a catalyst for transformation and rebalancing. The 5 points starting at the top going clockwise are sex, self, passion or pride, and dignity or power. So in reclaiming these energies of sex, pride, self, passion, pride, or dignity, and power, we reintegrate that which has been taken from us by the dominant culture, the mindless, monetized, mechanistic, militant system that we live in. Sex is the rush of sap into the tree and down my legs. It's the caress of a bee leg on a rose petal, the rooting of the mole into the earth. It's the line of my flesh etched into space by my breath. It's the heartbeat of the earth, the pulse of life, and the sun raising sweat beads on my skin. It's the shock of walking into cold ocean water and tingling deep down from the genitals, deep down to our tingling toes. Sex is connection to all of life. So to reclaim sex, we must reclaim the power of the life force, which is in all creative acts. Not acts. We must enter into the realm of worms, aerating the soil so roots can grow better. Of the roots thrusting into that earth, caressing it in the darkness. That's the realm of sex. Imagine birds in flight, coupling, plummeting toward earth in a dizzying spiral. Feel that power. In the midst of an incredible summer storm, the peacock god said, "Make love as the lightning strikes the earth and the earth rises up to meet the lightning." That is the power of the life force. Lightning arcing down and earth rising to kiss it. This is a power connected to all things, not divorced from the flow, not ruining our surroundings by being all too much inside our heads, prone to building more and more boxes to protect ourselves from the elements and from one another, slowly destroying our earth. In ordinary life, we either suppress sex energy so deeply we can barely feel it, or we run it in such a way it spills out of us and onto other people. When I am full of the life force and know that it is my sex energy, I can use it in the whole of my life and can be more engaged, can be more present while engaged in sex itself. Calling our sex power back into ourselves is also an acknowledgement that I cannot place responsibility for my sexual self upon any other being. It's up to me to be consciously connected to all things, to all of life. It being my energy, I don't need to fear it anymore. It's an energy I can draw on. I can feel sexy for myself and enjoy my own pleasure in sexuality. So the fiery energy of the iron pentacle runs from sex down to pride. So down to the left foot.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Pride enters when my spine aligns and I stand tall, when I speak my piece and my chest opens to the resonance of my voice. Pride enters when I am fully immersed in the dance of life, proud to be human, proud to be alive, proud to be about my life purpose, destiny, proud to know you, and proud to begin to know myself. Pride emerges when our will is engaged and we stand upright in our truth. And we are so often misinformed about what pride is. And what is called pride in our culture is usually arrogance or false pride. Arrogance has its flip side in self-deprecation or self-hate. So whenever we do not understand our own worth, our pride point is out of balance. Do you carry yourself with pride, or do you hunch forward, hiding yourself? Head pitched down, arms tucked, trying to take up as little space as possible. Taking up space is a really good thing. Be as big as you are. Be right-sized. How do you take up space? By gaining weight and becoming enormous? Or rather than just being as big as you are? Being right-sized is a sense of belonging to yourself and being proud of who you are. Our world needs for us human beings to stop skulking around and take our places, fulfill our destiny, and do it well. As we take pride out of its box, it will begin to grow around us. The more we realize what we have to be proud of, the more we will begin walking tall and do our work, our destiny gladly, fully, because abundance grows along with pride. So deep in the iron pentacle, the red hot iron energy now flows upward to the right arm, connecting pride to self, to that essence, large or small, which cannot be taken from us. Somewhere in all of us is a surety about who we are and what is important to us. Our sense of self is formed by many circumstances. We are molded by our childhood experiences, economic circumstances, and by other people's desires and expectations for us. These desires can include the need to have us remain as small as possible, to not be as big as we can be, or they want us to shine in ways we are not drawn to. Either set of expectations leaves us feeling not good enough, for it is seldom that a person can live up to another's expectations. So now the fiery iron energy flows from the right hand to the left, connecting self with power. What is power? Power is the ability to keep silent, gathering energy. Power is the ability to speak, to shout, to scatter. It is mutable, not static. Power must change in order to remain powerful. Otherwise, it becomes brittle. Power is in our lungs and heart, muscles and bones. Power is the sun, giving life to planets and people. Power is the dark potential of the buried seed. For most of us, power means an out-of-control temper and a slide into irrationality, violence, and betrayal. Power does not have to work this way. When we work with others who feel powerful, our work sparks and takes on life in interesting ways. Power shared is power magnified. So when I am in my full power, I am more secure, and the more secure I am, the more generous I am able to be. Insecurity breeds a mentality of scarcity. It becomes easy to feel there is not enough love, food, money, or attention to go around. Therefore, I feel I must scramble for it, using power over others to get what I want. Conversely, I might fear that I'll get used and abused because I don't step forward enough in the competition for power. Yet these are lies. There is no top, for there is no ladder. We stand in circular forms, passing our power hand to hand. We are not the same. For you have skills, wisdom, and knowledge I don't have, and I have skills, wisdom, and knowledge you don't, and we can work together and learn. We bring each other into shared power, not by assuming equality of skill, but by passing on what we know to one another. By bringing one another into the circle of shared life, we grow. We can listen to those who have walked the spiral paths ahead of us, and we can practice what they know and become strong. The greater our capacity to hold power, the greater our capacity is to use it wisely, compassionately, and in balanced fashion. The molten energy traces its way now from the left down the right leg, mapping a line from power to passion. The last point on the iron pentacle before the energy rises up to complete, to reach sex again.
Okay.
What is the source of your passion? What drives you? What do you desire more than anything? What would you risk for your passion? How do you avoid what you're passionate about? Passion flows from emotions, and emotions can be used to block our passion. When I'm stuck, it's helpful for me to remember that passion can come from compassion, which means passion with. If I have compassion, passion with for my needs and desires and my blocks and my failings, it creates a sense of ease in my life. And with ease, energy can flow. If I can unclench fear or judgment, my passion can grow something strong and lively. So the opposite, the destructive, because with the 5 elements, there's the Wu Qing, there's a creative force, and then there's the destructive control side, right? So we have a destructive control side with this, and that would be the Rust Pentacle with impotence, self-hatred, deprecation, apathy, shame, and powerlessness.
Wow. Well, I want to write that down. I'm standing up so I can get a notebook. This is so cool that I want to write it down. And I invite anyone to do that because it's really good. So, well, I like the fact that you have sex like as the first thing.
Well, it's the Oregon energy, it's the Reiki, it's the life force, it's the wisdom of God.
Right. And I always think and say, sex is always left as the last thing, right? It's like the last thing you speak about is the most, the least, the thing that you can be least open about to speak about, right? And I'm like, it shouldn't be like that. So that's why I like the fact that it's on the top. So from sex you go to pride, okay? Right?
Sex.
Can I go back to
sex? If you're drawing the pentagram, sex is at the top. It drops to the left point for self. No. Pride.
Pride, yeah. Pride to the left. Okay. So it's to the left first.
Sex drops down to the left.
Okay, pride.
For pride.
To the right, up to
Comes
the
up
right.
To the right arm for self.
Self, okay. And then to the left.
Comes over to the left for pride.
Wait, no, we have pride already.
Power.
Power, okay.
Power. And drops down to the right for passion.
Passion, okay. It goes back to, and then the negative ones?
Rises back up to sex.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite side is impotence.
Impotence, the opposite of sex?
Is the opposite of sex.
Okay. Then of pride would be? Shame, okay. Then self?
Well, I guess actually the opposite of pride would be self-deprecation.
Okay, self-deprecation.
So apathy would be the opposite of no. Okay. we go from sex down to pride. So we would go from impotence down to self-deprecation and up to power. Right, so we would go to powerlessness, from impotence to self-deprecation to powerlessness, across to shame, okay. And down to apathy. Apathy would be the opposite of passion.
Apathy. Okay. So that's written down because I want to study that even more. Already, so that's a whole lot. So then we
have the Pearl Pentacle.
Okay, another pentacle. Okay.
Yes. This pentacle shows the fruits of my dance with the Iron Pentacle. Working with the energies of love, truth, knowledge, liberty, and wisdom, the Pearl Pentacle holds the vision of a new society. It is a tool of providing a way to shift the balance of power into a more liberating, joyous, essentially alive communitarian society. The Pearl Pentacle appears when the Iron Pentacle is fully present. If sex energy is not running clearly within me, I do not have full access to love. Without balanced power, there can be no liberty. So the iron pentacle is my personal work. The pearl pentacle is the work I can do only in connection with others. And these pentacles are not separate. They are inextricably linked and strongly affect all. So we start at the top. The love of the pearl pentacle is not the romantic love or subsuming one spirit and life force to another. This is Munai, the deep love linked to the first act of sex and creation, the act that called on spirit to infuse all things. This is the respectful caring that underlies all. It is in the breeze on each tree leaf. Love is that which uses the life force well and for the good of all. This is Munai.
Okay.
Aloha also. It is vast, encompassing cultures, animals, plants, suns, and stars. Without respect, there is no love. And the more we meditate and focus on the things that fill us with love, the more open to love we will become. And the world will become a thing to love. So the luminous energy of the pearl pentacle runs like water from love down to the left, connecting it to universal truths. The truths of the pearl based on pride is universal. Where pride is present, there is a sense of worthiness and belonging to community and the natural flow. When laws are made in response to unworthiness, which every single 100% of our laws we follow today are made in response to unworthiness. They cause isolation, suspicion, and a divorce from nature. Universal truths are not always nice because earthquakes topple structure, fire scythes through a forest like a knife, making more space for seeds to grow. So universal truths are about balance and connection. Universal truths are also about my will and the way I use it. I cannot live according to universal truths if I have caused an imbalance and have not sought to rectify the imbalance. Universal truths require the engagement of individuals working to bring their lives into alignment with one another and with universal truths. And these truths require movement. Truth must balance belief and action. My ideas must be galvanized by my will and willingness. If I want change, I must be willing to act, and that is the power of universal truth. So now, like the reflection of moon upon water, the shimmering pearl wave flows upward from truth into knowledge, the right hand, the right point. We often confuse knowledge with purely intellectual intelligence. It is not simply this, though intellect is included. Knowledge is held in our bones, in our blood cells, in muscle tissues, in emotional memories, as well as in parts of our brain. Information alone does not constitute knowledge. I must digest the information, incorporate it, practice it, and make associations in myself, and then it becomes knowledge.
Wow.
Living in this information overload age can make it difficult for us to sink deeply into any area long enough to gain knowledge. It is part of the work of the Pearl Pentacle to bring forward the ability to have knowledge, to know myself first of all, and then to connect to other sources of knowledge, becoming an intern, a resident, and a fellow, and then finally an elder of Aloha Ainidao living. So in this way, we can become part of evolution instead of aiding the spiral into less than human. Knowledge is founded on self. Know yourself in all your parts. So water flows over the pearl, carrying a shimmer from your heart on the stream of energy flowing from knowledge into liberty, the left hand. Liberty means freedom on the grandest scale. Liberty comes from having the power to be able to do what we want and to discern whether or not our wants serve us. Many of our wants fuel self-destruction. When I differentiate between what helps me grow or what impedes my growth, then I have power to dream of a freedom that can and will come, liberating myself. Liberty is based on power.
Mm-hmm.
So water continues to flow, and the energy of the Pearl Pentacle sketches a luminous line from the left down to the right, liberty to wisdom. Wisdom is intuition and integrated knowledge. We are all able to be wise. It is not the purview of spiritual gurus only, or priests, or pastors, or psychologists, or counselors. Wisdom springs from our deepest passions. Wisdom is deeply rational, stemming from passion, emotion, instinct, and digested knowledge. Wisdom gets expressed through any form of communication that draws on more than just our verbal skills.
Yeah.
So the control or destructive cycle of this pentacle is the gilded pentacle with greed.
Okay.
Down to well, we're going around. I listed these left to right, or going around the circle instead of flowing. Love, truth. So we go from greed down to obsession, I think, up to arrogance, over to egotism, and down to force.
Egotism, down to force. You know, and when you were talking about wisdom, and I'm writing this down, it came into my mind two words: intrinsic and intimate. Two things that you were describing away already. So is there? I'm intuiting there's another pentagram.
Well, now we're going to move into the Venus pentangle.
Okay.
we have the third word.
Okay.
I like these: pentacle, pentagram, pentangle. I think I like the word pentangle better than all of them because it's fun to say.
Yeah, pentangle. And well, let's say first, in case somebody's not that familiar with the fact that Venus, as it in the position it makes with the Earth and the Sun, if you draw lines between those positions, and as
well,
it
we're
goes
going to
around,
get there.
Oh, so you're gonna say that? Okay, already.
Yeah.
You're gonna get there. Okay.
We're going to get there. So Venus is in her greatest strength and power when she's closest to the earth and brightest. And she just 14 days ago was at her absolute brightest for the first time in 3 years. I mean, she was bright, bright, bright. She was as bright as the grandmother moon is on her dimmest time.
Mm-hmm.
So she was in her greatest strength and power just a few days ago. She is not diminished. She is empowered and enhanced during her retrograde cycle, because that's what she is right now. She's appears to be moving backwards through the sky because she's making her orbit. She is completely synthesizing her current cycle during her evening star retrograde cycle, which is what she's doing now. She's also beginning a new cycle at her heliacal rise as she becomes a morning star, going through a total reincarnation from one expression of divine feminine to another. So we're in this very potent, powerful time as Venus turned retrograde, as Venus started to turn and turn. So for women, Venus is representative of our intentional feminine expression in our current life. For men, she's your inner feminine, your inner beloved, your inner other. So she goes retrograde, which means it looks like she's going backwards, after being in the evening sky for 7 or 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
it's usually within 20 to 28 days after a seventh or eighth gate. These gates are a Moon-Venus conjunction. So after she's conjuncted grandmother Moon 7 or 8 times, we know she's going to go retrograde. She goes retrograde as an evening star for about 16 days, It can be longer than this. And about 3 days before an exact conjunction with grandfather Sun, she totally disappears from the evening sky because she's with grandfather Sun for 7 or 8 days. She's not in the morning sky. She's not in the evening sky. She's with grandfather Sun. And then she rises as a morning star, still retrograde, and is retrograde as a morning star for another 16 days, for a total of about 40 to 43 days. So when she's an evening star, she's considered going into the underworld. And as she's gone retrograde, now she's really preparing. When she disappears from the sky totally, she's still there, but we can't see her because she's with grandfather Sun. She is truly meta underworld at that point. So during these 16 days, it's a time of reflection for us, integration and preparation to alchemically transform into a new expression of ourselves. So during this time of her retrograde, before she goes pow, totally pow, totally powerful pow. This is the descent of Persephone, Inanna, into the underworld. We feel and express gratitude for everything we've learned in the last 19 months. We celebrate all the ways we have grown in the last 19 months, and we prepare to surrender something as we prepare to be born anew, as our divine feminine prepares to be born anew. So the question to ask ourselves right now is, what aspect of myself or identity am I willing to let go of or change? So she passes between the earth and the sun, disappearing into this metamorphic underworld, not visible as evening star and not visible as morning star, where she goes to complete death to her old identity, preparing to be reborn in a new incarnation. So in 2004 and 2012, she transited the face of grandfather Sun while in the underworld, and she won't do this again till 2125. So 2012 was a 100-year episode. Over. Anyway, so during this time, when she's truly in these 7 or 8 days, when she disappears from the sky, it is truly time to surrender our old identities, our limited perspectives and awareness, while preparing for a rapid transformation into a new identity. And we may experience during this time more fluidity with reality, in time and reality. And it's time for a quantum leap in consciousness, accelerating our personal and collective evolutionary development. And in our chart, we have a Venus return to where she was at the time of our birth every 8 years. Now, let's go deeper. Okay. So before we go deeper, a little bit more focusing, this is the time while she's retrograde is to focus on our vision to align with our desired timeline, to take inspired action as she comes out of the retrograde. So when she rises from this metamorphic underworld, she emerges as the reincarnated meta goddess, guiding our way for the next 19 months. It's time to sacrifice, which actually meant to make sacred, and which means to be all in for what next comes next. This is the time to just let go of everything, to be all in for what comes next. So here is a prayer of Venus for us. I am the goddess of all chemical transformation. I am all endings, all beginnings, and all that is in between. I am ancient and I am newborn. I am the alchemy of life itself. I offer all that I am as I surrender again and again, dying to be reborn. My galactic womb gives birth to the ever-evolving universe through renewal of this wondrous metamorphic process. I am your quantum leap into the unknown, into the beyond. I inspire you to abandon, let go of, and release all that is not love. I urge you to surrender into your true, pure, radiant heart. I am the new earth, the new reality, the new you reborn. I am you, fully realized, awakened, and transformed. So now we're going to go deeper into the pentacle of Venus.
Okay.
So there's two types of conjunctions she makes with the sun. One is an inferior, one is a superior. When she makes an inferior conjunction, it goes, if we're looking out from us, Earth, Venus, Sun. So she passes between us and the sun. When it's a superior conjunction, it's Earth, Sun, and Venus. She's on the other side of grandfather's sun. So we're only going to talk about inferior conjunctions right now. So every other Sun-Venus conjunction happens with a inferior conjunction happens with a Venus retrograde. Every other one. So they mix. So one happens with a superior, one happens with an inferior. The time between one inferior conjunction to the next is 584 days. And she does this 5 times. And at the 6th, she has returned to within a couple degrees of her starting point. So we have 5 inferior conjunctions with the 6th to reboot the whole cycle. So these 5 cycles is 8 years. So the 6th starts anew. So this is where, if we plotted these inferior conjunctions, if we drew a 360-degree circle and plotted these conjunctions, she would draw a pentagram in the sky. This is the pentacle.
Right. So
this is the beauty of this. As I read this morning and plugged this into my own timeline, back in 2014, I was making the plans to come to Oklahoma to start this farm, to do something different for us veterans out here flapping in the breeze.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be 2 years ago this fall. I started with my daughter Alexis hiking as she was preparing to become a wildland firefighter, and she had to be able to hike 3 miles with a 50-pound backpack on in 15 minutes or in 45 minutes. So we started hiking lots, and I also at that point realized I had been repeating the same pattern over and over in the fall. And I was like, I can't live this life anymore. I can't do this by myself anymore. There's got to be something bigger than this. So I started making a bigger plan, a 12-year plan, a 20-year plan to conjunct with the power of Saturn and Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter, the 13 years of Jupiter, Neptune. I started making that. And I remember it was because Alexis would drive one direction. We were usually driving an hour and a half to where we went hiking. So I would have my book and my markers and I'd be writing my plan. It wasn't until last June that I was finishing that 20-year plan. And our donkey gave birth. And I was like, when was the young donkey, when was she born? So I went back and looked, and Vidalia, this new mama donkey, was born in 2014. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I am right on time. Right on time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, January 9 of 2022 was the last time Venus went retrograde, but she met in the sky. She conjuncted, Mercury and grandfather sun conjuncted very closely. And this happens once every, this doesn't happen very often. This Mercury grandfather sun, I think it happens once every 8 years. So this happened in January 9 of 2022. So I've been thinking this whole time we've shifted to a new 8-year cycle. Why are things not opening up and moving? And then I found out this today. I discovered this today. So we've been in this 6th cycle of reboot. So even though she started the sixth cycle as a morning star and then went to evening star, this whole last 19 months has been getting us ready for this next octave, for this next 8 years. So I really, truly am right on time.
Yeah.
It is so cool. Now, the very interesting thing is, right, she is your, as you as a man, she's your divine feminine, right? So what happened right before she went retrograde? Who came into your life?
Right.
Right?
Your girlfriend, yeah.
Right? Now, here's the interesting thing is she's been evening star now for 200 and, let me look here. I've got it exactly. She's been an evening star now for 244 days. 245 days. She's been an evening star, which puts us back. 9 months would be 270, so that puts us back about 8 months. So right at December time frame was when she shifted from morning star to evening star. Right. That would be the time. It was last Thanksgiving time frame when Jack's mother had been sick and in the hospital, and I went into ICU nurse mode and tried to help him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Help him. And I was getting really frustrated because he wasn't giving me information and listen, right? And I walked outside to take a break we were baking Christmas cookies, and I walked outside to take this break and to clear my head and figure out why I was, and I heard the words, Ingrid, it's time for you to fully shed the RN. Fully shed it. Let it go. I now understand that. Because as she was shifting into evening star, going into the underworld, it's time to shed. So you can be reborn as a midwife of the new. And that's been happening during this whole evening star cycle. It's been shed, rebirth. And I've even been seeing Jack come around, right?
Right.
It's so cool. So right before she goes retrograde, I get the inspiration to tell this potential volunteer that was running me over, I am their sensei of this dojo. And he cuts and runs because he doesn't want to be ruled by a woman, and it's not a rulership, but right. And at the same time, I'm saying I'm the sensei. I'm really desiring to discover a form, a martial art form, I guess, that I can practice every day. That's a different movement for health. And I finally just 2 days ago signed up for the Shaolin Temple. Hey, self-mastery. This is all not coincidence. This is all not just sheer luck. This is not all just, this is me being totally in alignment with this total for the last 19 months, we've been in this reboot. Even though she was morning star for a while, it's still been kind of a whole underworld cycle to reboot so that we can poof jump into this evolutionary leap into this new 8-year cycle with as she comes out of evening star retrograde into morning star in these next 45 days.
So she is the time. She is the beauty of time. She makes time, and that explains why the Mayas had such a specific interest in tracking her. And
right, but they didn't have all this bigger information, right? Which is really cool. So now there's a 40-year Venus cycle, and it has to do with that Mercury Sun Venus conjunction. So if I go back 40 years from 2022, January 29 of 2022, I had just turned 14. What did I do during the next 8-year cycle? My mom and dad, we were living on these cohabitation dehesas, religious cohabitation dehesas that were called self-supporting work, and were not, none of them still are self-supporting by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
All religious based, very, very, very staunch religious. You could call us Hutterites or Mennonites, or Amish people wondered if we were, because we wore our dresses 3 inches below our knees working in the fields, right? But the best one we were at was so at 14, so the best one we were at was in Utah, where we actually had a farm. So we were actually mostly self-sufficient with food, mostly, because our farm manager grew all kinds of wonderful produce. And then we went to Okinawa to establish another one, and Germany, and came back. And that's when I turned 14, when we started a new 40-year Venus cycle. So over the last 40 years, I have followed this path of disengaging from the religious world of an absent God, no spirit in flesh, into being a nurse, which was my path, my destiny, and now coming full cycle to reboot, to reestablish adult community dehesas as a leader of this. This is so profound to me. It's just absolutely amazing.
It is. And
so as she draws this pentacle, this pentangle in the sky, the whole pentangle moves in a complete circle every 1,215 years. So considering that she, Mercury, and grandfather Sun were in such a close conjunction in January of 2022, just 2 years after the great Saturn-Jupiter conjunction that was started, we know absolutely between 2020 and 2022, we have started a whole new 1,000-year cycle. Without a doubt.
Okay. Well, I want to feel surprised, but I am not. I'm like trying to figure that out. I'm like, this is so amazing, and but it seems so, it's so natural. It's so especially when we're talking about me being right on time, right? And you being right on time, and all this being right on time. It's like, yeah, well, I know, but then you pointing it out is crucial. It's really important to me personally. I mean, everything you say to me is like this sacred speech, where even if you might know about it somehow, you need to hear it, right? You need to hear it. You need those words to be pronounced. And so all I have left is just the immense silent, like as big as the silence of space, gratitude towards being on time, towards all of this being there, and towards you mentioning those words, and us
Well,
being on the path, and us being on time.
well, and total pride for myself because like I told you this morning in a voice message, it's just so liberating to realize how aligned I've been
Mm-hmm.
with everything, 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 everything. Every aspect of my life has been guided. I've been listening.
Mm-hmm. And the more I feel that the more time goes by, the more we continue, the more alive you sound, the more inspired, the more creative, the more even aroused and erotic
Well,
and
she is the
powerful,
planet of that Eros. Because
and
without
all
the
these
sex, we can't
and all
have
these
the
words.
passion.
I mean, you sound powerful, you sound proud, you sound passionate. Um, you have all that. And it's every day more and I'm thinking now about everybody else. Everybody else. What are they in? Why aren't they? And I'm thinking they do listen and 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 they are following, yet they just have to cross the line, maybe cross a what is it, right? What is it that's going to trigger them into just this
To really
definite
opening and listening. Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, back in 2011, I standing at the nurse's station of my best job ever as an RN, I thought the words, I cannot do this. I cannot live this life anymore. Well, what's the same thing I heard 2 years ago inside my brain? I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this by myself anymore. This was meant to be a farm to help people, not just this single family, single woman farm, right? I can't do this by myself anymore. So I've got to get on the stick and do something different.
And now you're creating morphic fields, and you're weaving knowledge and wisdom together, that even if I know you feel it's just a small part of doing what you want to do and what you're doing, recording these videos and mentioning these words and writing these books and all that, I think it's already so much that is being done, that you're doing, that we're doing. It's
Oh,
already
dude.
so much of an arrowhead, of something that's breaking, that is just flying. It's opening up the space.
Well, and it's so cool that it's all within this 19-month cycle, the sixth reboot cycle, right? It's been a little bit longer than 19 months, but that's because everything is a process, right? So it started, I'm going to say that probably with every evening star underworld cycle of Venus, somebody is hearing, I cannot live this life anymore, and they're not paying any attention.
Well, let's tell them that it's what I've been telling my girlfriend. It's so possible. It's you can't, sometimes you can't imagine it because you haven't seen it. You've never seen it on TV. You've never read it in any knowledge, in anything that's really part of the system. It's kind of out of our imagination in a way. But once you realize that there's a world outside of that sphere of what you think is the only possible thing, then it's just a very large universe, and that's where everybody is. That's what we are, where we are now, and it's full of love, and it's full of beings, and it's full of so much guidance, and so many voices, and so many things that are there to bring you in, to call you in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was gonna ask, what you were describing the last phases of Venus. What would be the next one? What should we prepare for?
Well, we're
Or
going into she's now, for me, for this next 8-year pentangle, people have described this as the lotus flower. So for the last 8 years, she was in my life building the stamen, the inside of the flower where the bee pollinates. Now for this next 8-year cycle, it's going to be filling in the whole flower for my life.
So
for somebody else,
drawing in the lines.
Outlining the whole flower.
Okay, that's
right?
beautiful. Giving more depth to what is already
Expanding.
starting to show.
Right. Opening the flower, unfurling the petals.
Okay.
So for somebody else in their 8-year cycle, I mean, Jack is where I was at 10 years ago. So he's, for this cycle, for him, it's going to be drawing him into his, as he works with me, it's going to be drawing him into his inner vision or what his life, so that in the next octave after that, he can blossom into a full flower.
Wow. Okay. So
as I, at that point, will be drawing a new inner path to blossom into a new outer.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that helps to know how it works as well.
Yeah.
And so we continue next week with what conversation?
Well, we're going to go. So we had the 5 elements. So what comes next is the 8 on the golden spiral. The 8, the Bagua, the 8 forces.
All right.
And we'll go into the 8 extra meridians that make up our inner cage, so to speak.
Okay.
So the 8 forces with the 8 extra meridians. That's what they're, extraordinary meridians. That's what they're called.
Okay, the 8 forces with the 8 extraordinary meridians.
Yeah.
I'll title the conversation that, and invite everyone for next week, same time, 8:30. Aloha Ainidao Living. There's so much said and nothing else to say for now, I guess. Shall we close?
Yep.
The conversation? So we shall, but we never close the expansion path, so that stays open and you guys can join anytime. So see you soon.